I feel like he's gonna pull back because he's also got like that real important job. Because that's a weird town and there's a lot of science to do. But it really, like, it got me, and I was like, what are these things that are But it really did, and when I was watching you guys perform it on that stage that night, and honestly, again, I really am basically dead inside, and I'm watching this, and I was like, are they gonna be separated? I don't think I can take it. You guys know what I mean?
Yes!
We feel it. Because I can see, I'm looking and I'm seeing your faces. Also, I want to say what happened that night was that this moment where there's this beautiful line. It was Old Oak Doors 1 and 2. Is it Old Oak Doors or just Oak Doors? It's Old Oak Doors 1 and 2. There's this line where Carlos says, "I'm not a hero. I'm a scientist." And there was a row of scientists. They were like 2 rows back in, and you could tell they were scientists because they were just like scientists. And they all went like this. And they were there with him. They were there. They were 100% there with you. Did you lose it? Because honestly, I have never seen people who were more there. They didn't have to say a thing. They just were present, and if you had said, "I want you to go out. I want you to get a microscope. I want you to do some science," they would have just stood up, nodded once, and done.
Now the weather.
Scary way. Just for science. And that's what's so beautiful about it. I feel like we should take a few questions, because I feel like what's great about Nightvale is there are so many different alleys. Like, I personally have tons and tons of questions, like about the Days Inn. It's not a Days Inn. That's under the disused bowling alley. The place with the king size beds and the. And it has HBO.
The abandoned mine shaft.
The abandoned mine shaft.
With the free HBO.
With the free,
Yep.
It has free HBO. It's just my personal favorites. I'm gonna take a couple questions, and then being the kind of moderator I am, I'm gonna just start asking some other things. How about we go straight back? Yes, you. Yes, blue hair. Yes. I'm just gonna identify you by hair color, everybody. Yeah, where does Welcome to Nightvale come from?
That is Joseph came up with that name. He, in the process of coming up with the theme of the show, like just trying to come up with the kernel, the idea, like what would be a cool idea for a show that we could write. He wanted it to be, once he got the idea of this, like, the original kernel was like, what if there were a town where every conspiracy theory you can think of is true, and everybody just said that's just how life is, it's not even a conspiracy. Like, of course that's the thing. Of course there are lizard people. And then you just go on from there. And so in trying to come up with a name, it was basically, I think he just pieced together a lot of different combinations of names that kind of have, you're right. It's the same way you come up with a name of a character or something. You just find something that sounds good. And then he did just a bunch of Google searches on some of his ideas, and Nightvale as a thing didn't exist. Like, he couldn't find anything for that because he didn't want to name it after a town that is an actual town in America.
Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Oh man, we would have had so much more listeners at the start. Yeah, that was basically just wanted to find an original name.
How about right over there? Yep.
Oh.
You seem so ready.
Ready.
No, please, no. Not Five Nights at Freddy's. Go away. Shh. If you could take a break from your career to jump into another career path, what would it be?
Don't do that.
Want me to pick a different?
Start a podcast.
Want me to pick a different?
I know when I was in high school, I really wanted to be an English teacher, so I might go back to that kind of original love. Yeah, I think that'd be really cool.
I would really like to own a coffee shop.
Drop at you.
Yeah, when I was working as a barista, I really loved it. I think it's a cool sense of community when you give people a drug that they need for the day. I like
Lots of repeat customers.
Yeah. A state-sanctioned drug. No, but I think the cafe is a really cool space, and I think it still exists. Whether it's in your local Starbucks, whether it's in a hip cafe that intended to be so. But yeah, I would love to be a cafe owner. It's a ton of work. I think you work around the clock all day, but my fiance and I have plans that like when we retire, that is like a nice fantasy. But it's probably
Yay.
not happening, so.
Todd and Dylan's
You
coffee
guys are a
shop.
bunch of soft touches. How about right here?
Obviously, there's a lot of differences between stage work and a podcast. What would you say are some of the differences the biggest differences that you notice, and what are the things that you like better about doing a podcast than doing stage work?
Is it no pants?
Let me tell you, the recording of a podcast requires much less prepping and primping and clothing. Yeah. Yeah, it is really interesting. When you're performing for a microphone that is directly in front of you, and you have to kind of focus all of your energy and intent into that microphone, because you know that the people listening are, far, far away and in a different time and a different, they're not in the room with you. It's like a laser. It's very focused and it's very intense. And then when you're performing on stage, something like this, there's people from there to there, and you can't take in all of it at once. So you kind of have to connect with people as you go, and it's much more broad. And not to mention the fact that we're taking in what we're hearing from you, and we're making microscopic adjustments to that. Every awe or shift in a seat or things like that. It's all stimulus that's like, oh, maybe I'm losing them. Do I need to get them back? Do I need to be funnier? Do I need to be more serious? Do I need to do this? Do I need to be faster or slower? And you adjust your performance accordingly. And that's a very special skill that's extremely different than recording by yourself with just you and the material. And it's really amazing, the work that Joseph and Jeffrey have done in creating scripts for the live shows that are kind of very different than the podcast. And then, the novel is a whole other ball of wax. That performing the live shows is something just very different than performing in a booth by yourself.
Well, going back to the neo-futurist thing too, like I've always been so fascinated about the idea of like taking a story from one medium into another and going from podcast to just doing the novel, or going from podcast to stage. They're two so different mediums, and while the structure of an episode might be similar, you might on the surface just go, oh, this is just like a longer episode. But you really do have to write with Dylan and Cecil and Mara and Maureen and Jessica and whoever else is going to be on the show, with them in mind as who they are, the stage presence. I learned very early on in my work performing with the Neo Futurists. I think my first run in the show, Rob Neal, it's like afterwards was like, hey man, just when you perform, like when you're just talking to the audience, he's like, just hold your feet still, like just plant them in the ground, don't move them. Just keep your feet flat on the floor, and then just look people in the eye and just acknowledge that they're there. Just find somebody in the room and look them in the eye. Don't do this old speech trick where you look out over the audience and pretend they're in their underwear. Like actually just find people and acknowledge their presence. And that has spoke to me so much as a writer too, because I'm like, that's what he does. That's what both of these guys do when they perform. And they do such a great job acknowledging the awareness of the audience, and that we don't write plays that are in a fishbowl, and we can't write the words like that. We have to write the words that Cecil's allowed to use the audience energy and play back and forth.
And this is something we're going to actually, because you're going to be on another panel tomorrow in Lit Track at 11 a.m. about adaptation. I went to theater school, and I also went to writing school at the same time because I'm a nut. and my specialty was adaptation. So turning things from a book to usually a book to a play, you very rarely see them dialed back the other way, unless it's like the novelization of NASCAR or whatever. Then there's a kind of formula for making that. You very rarely see something that is a story that exists kind of in the air turned into a book. And so we're gonna get a chance to maybe talk about, I have many questions about that, and talk about that a little bit more tomorrow, because as you know, there is a Nightvale novel that's going to be coming in October, and I've read it and it is amazing.
Thanks.
And I think when I saw you a couple times when you're writing it, and you look like this. So I just wanted to help you relive that moment. How about right there? Yes.
How did each of you start in the theater world with the writing and acting? That's like something so
I started, I've really loved acting since I was a kid. And when you're younger, when you're in middle school and high school, the avenues are kind of like strictly like, do you act? Yes. And so that was really the only option. It's like act in plays. And then the options kind of blossomed in college. And what I really, really jived with was I joined a sketch comedy group in college. And that like blew everything out of the water for me, because you are writing with a group of people who, in ideal circumstances, as mine were, are your best friends, and you're creating work that speak to a community, and then the community is listening and telling you that they're listening by laughing. And it was, I learned how to write there. I learned how to be a better performer there, because I was performing roles that didn't exist in Shakespeare and all of the classic American plays that high school teachers like to put on, but I was creating new things. And then through that led me to doing comedy work in New York. And as I said before, I think what I realized that what I had in college was pretty unique in that we had a big freedom to do a lot of stuff and just be totally weird. And then I found the neo-futurists, and there was not this fine line. There was not this like designation of actor or writer. It was like, you are everything. You are creating stuff to put on stage, and I really found my director's voice there too. So it's always hard to identify as like what I do right now. I don't know that I have a job title, but I feel really fortunate that I had enough opportunities to find what interested me and find what I was good at to keep following the thread.
So I started early on in Knoxville, Tennessee, doing show choir. I was straight up a show choir kid for most of my middle school and high school experience, and I had a blast. I had a blast doing it. I loved musicals. I would go to New York and see everything on Broadway I could get my hands on. But the problem was I had this like super low, deep voice, and there is no music written for a bass. Ever. Like, I get that one song in Jesus Christ Superstar, and that's it. That's it. So I found pretty early on that...
Come on, do it.
Maybe later. Find me, again, I'm doing a panel in the hotel lobby. For me and Toby Keith, me and Margaritaville.
Wasting away again.
They have live music there.
That's me singing Select Song from Jesus Christ Superstar.
What will we do with this Jesus from Nazareth?
That's right. So I went to school for theater and realized, and also it was, I think similar to like Dylan's searching of like, sketch comedy. I was looking for something that wasn't like, you don't have to do the three-finger smile all the time on stage. Yeah, that's right. Because that was it. That was all it was. And all my friends were auditioning for Kids Incorporated or Kids Unlimited and the Mickey Mouse Club. And they got that.
Really small mouth. The dentists have a lot of trouble with it, and they have to use these tools they use on children. So I don't know I could get. It really hurts. Sorry, I didn't mean to derail your story, but once you said three-fingered smile, I was off.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Well, I mean, the theater work, it's hard. It's hard work.
I thought for a while you meant this way.
No.
Which is easy. That's not that.
That's pretty manageable.
That's manageable. I have to squish them together, and I have small hands too. I have a lot of creepy qualities. Like my fingernails are real small, like a toddler's or a child's. And sometimes a manicurist goes, "Your fingernails are creepy small." I realize this is not relevant. But they're really small.
Yeah.
I mean, they're pretty. Which is a song. What would we do with this?
Like that's it. That's all you got.
And he wears a big hat.
Yeah. But then, so I went to theater school and realized that you can be a bass and actually get stage time. No, and you can tell different stories, and it doesn't, it kind of expanded my mind, and I kept searching from there about where I fit into that big world of entertainment and what would be the right thing for me. And eventually, still searching for it.
Yeah, good luck. I mean, because people do like what you do, though. I mean.
Sure.
Yeah,
no,
they
absolutely.
like they really.
I'm not dead.
No.
Like this is not my like retrospective.
Remembering Cecil.
In memoriam.
No.
His career died. the moment he ate his own hand on stage at Comic-Con.
He just kept trying to get 3 fingers in his mouth.
And his head exploded. And that was
And he got it in, he just kept going. And he put his hand down his throat.
And now the weather.
And grabbed his own heart. Did you answer?
No, but I will. I started studying theater in college. I was not a theater major. I just started taking theater classes and playwriting classes. I had no acting background at that time, and so I felt so far behind the curve that I just wanted to work on writing. And I just had been interested in being a writer for a long time, so I was like, I'll be a playwright. This will be great. And I eventually just got into theater production, from fundraising to actually producing and hiring and things like that, but never actually acting. It was a friend of all of ours, our friend Adam Smith, who got me to act for the very first time. I was in my early 30s before I was ever on a stage as a performer, and it was just for a 10-minute play that I did in Northampton, Massachusetts, back in 2005 or so. And then we moved to New York, and I auditioned for the Neo Futures. The Neo Futures really were my first actual gig as a performer on stage. Which is another great intro there, because it's it's not even acting. It's just grounding yourself and performing and talking to people just in a loud way. And
That's all that acting is.
That's all it is. That's
the best actors are the loudest actors. You just have to be louder than everyone else and say your lines faster and knock them over, and then you win.
Art, if nothing else, is a competition.
That's right. How about right there? Yes.
Even okay. So when you're so if you're voicing, so how do you prepare for the intensity of situations? Whether you're angry or talking to her about Carlos.
I mean, first you read the whole script. Start by prep. I mean, it sounds really obvious, but you would not believe the amount of people that are just blah 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 my line, blah 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 my line. Like read everything. Figure out where you want the story to go, how you want to present it, because like the language that Joseph and Jeffrey use it's not necessarily on the page. It's think back to some of the things you've heard in Nightvale, like some of the traffic reports in particular are always kind of that's like where I feel like I get a chance to shine, because it could go anywhere. Like it's a description of a man running through a desert, and it could have like whatever meaning I put on it, or whatever the listener puts on it is it could go anywhere. I like to when people ask me, oh, what do you think this character looks like? What do you think that character looks like? And I don't have an answer, because I almost never think about what they look like. I think about how they make me feel when I talk to them. Talking to your mom is very different than talking to the IRS. But you can have the exact same. I mean, my mom.
Well, I'm talking to your mom.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. But you can have the same language and still, have different meanings come out of the scene. So, I think and then just honestly, I just make choices that I find interesting. If I think it's funny, then I'm like, well, maybe somebody else will think it's funny. If I find it, honestly, the reaction of like Cecil to Carlos that very first time was just me going, if I met somebody who I, find really attractive and was like, oh my gosh, I love them, that's what I would do. And it wasn't a pre-planned choice. It was just what kind of came out. And it wasn't meant to like strategically trigger